Okay, let's get the show on the road here. So everyone, you're welcome to turn on your video feeds if you're able to, or when you have questions down the line, unmute yourself. But I'll give a brief intro here just to set the stage. So thanks to everyone for joining us today. First and foremost, we're excited to bring Schulich leaders together to learn about various aspects of the entrepreneurial ecosystem from leaders in the field. And we also love giving you the opportunity to engage with each other on your own entrepreneurial pursuits and aspirations through our Startup Circle initiative in partnership with Leaders Fund. And we're also joined by a couple of folks at the Leaders Fund. So this is a Toronto and Atlanta-based VC firm investing in B2B SaaS companies across North America and Israel, and focus on seed Series A and Series B investments. Fund is led by ex-operators who have founded and run 11 companies between them. Isabel and David are here today, both investors at the Leaders Fund, and are helping to guide our startup circle within the Schulich Leader Network. And like many of you here, Isabel is a Schulich Leader grad and graduated from Queen's Mechanical Engineering and Applied Math a couple of years ago. And David Kamenetsky joined the team early in 2017 after graduating from Queen's as well, and serves as the principal of Leaders Fund. So Leaders Fund is closely associated with the Schulich Foundation and has been invested in 3 companies here to date. So we're excited to have our 3 senior leaders of companies with ties to the Leaders Fund, Ada, 360 Insights, and Threekit. Kerris Hougardy is a VP of People at Ada. Trinda Searle is an Executive VP of People and Culture at 360 Insights. And Krista Perchikovsky is Head of Employee Success at Threekit. Our moderator for today's session is Austin Sawyer. He is a co-founder and COO of Tidal Medical out of Toronto. It's a medical device and digital health company determined to redefine congestive heart failure management by offering unparalleled access to high quality outpatient care from the home setting. Austin was also a Schulich leader in 2015 from the University of Victoria with a degree in biomedical engineering, and serves as the co-chair of our Canadian Schulich Leader Alumni Network, focusing on the entrepreneurship pillar. So after I pass it off to Austin, who will lead the panel discussion, Schulich leaders will then have the opportunity to join breakout groups and discuss talent acquisition and the human capital component of a startup enterprise for approximately 30 minutes. So I'll pass on the host privileges to Austin to engage our great panelists.
Awesome. Thanks so much, David. And Krista, Kerris, and Trinda, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I know hiring is the top of my mind and keeping people around. So I'm very, very excited to be moderating this session with you today. I think it'd be useful just to start off with some introductions about yourselves and your companies and the stage that we're at. I think everyone would be really interested to hear just a brief introduction to yourself, stage and size of company, and just what your role is. So I'll go off the order on my screen, but Krista, if you want to start.
Sure, no problem. So as mentioned earlier, I work at Threekit Technologies. We are a company that is global. So we're Canada, the US, and then we're across EMEA as well. We have approximately about 100 employees. And the work that we do in our company is we partner with companies that have products that are configurable, and we do virtual photography, 3D imaging, and augmented reality. And we just did a round of funding, our Series B funding this past fall.
Congratulations, that's amazing. And Kerris?
Hi, and thanks for inviting me. It's exciting to be here. So I work for Ada, and I'm the VP of People there. The company went through Series C funding just over a year ago. We became a Canadian unicorn at that time with a valuation of 1.2 billion and raised about 130 million in funding at that point. We're just about to hit 500 employees, which is super exciting. So grown pretty rapidly over the last couple of years. As an organization, we focus on partnering with brands to be able to provide VIP experiences to their customers. And that's primarily through automation and machine learning. But if anybody's ever waited on hold for more than a couple of minutes, they can understand how frustrating that is. And I'm sure they wish they had a mechanism by which to get quick answers or to automate a certain part of the process in where they're kind of interacting as a customer for certain products or services. So yeah, excited to be here.
I look forward to that product being in market. I have waited a very long time on hold with various websites. So that's great. Thanks, Kerris. And last but not least, Trinda.
Hi there, I'm Trinda Searle. So I work with the People and Culture team at 360 Insights. We are a Canadian headquartered company just outside Toronto, going on a 15-year anniversary, founded in 2008 by Jason Atkins, gone through a variety of rounds of funding. And we're in a really exciting time for the organization as we expect to see the organization go through an IPO sometime in the next 24-ish months. And so we're kind of going through the process of practicing operating like a public company. So we're ready when that comes, both from a an infrastructure standpoint and making sure our people are not culture shocked when we go through that experience. So it's a really exciting time. We've grown rapidly. I've been with the company for about 3 years. When I joined, we were around 350 employees with a very light size team in the US and UK. Now we are over 600 employees and we have over 100 people in the UK and bordering on 200 in the US. A lot of our growth's been both organic and through acquisition. So we've been buying up some technologies that pair well with our core offering of incentives and rebates. So our software supports automation of doing anything from an instant rebate if you were a consumer, as opposed to mailing it in and waiting for your check to come back, all the way through incentivizing salespeople for big brands, doing cooperative advertising, and our software helps to adjudicate all those claims.
That's amazing. Great. Okay. So in terms of, we have a pretty wide range of audience here, and it's been an awesome time getting this entrepreneurship stream up and running in the Schulich Foundation. So we have some people that are curious about startups and want to go work for them and are trying to find out how they can find opportunities. And then on the other end, we have people that are founding companies, operators looking for advice on how to hire, find and retain talent. So I think we'll spend the first portion with the employee lens of, I want to work at a startup, and then we'll transition into more of the operator lens of how you guys think about finding and retaining talent. So first, I think it's a great place to start on, how do you find startups to work for or smaller organizations? I think everyone knows the classic, FANG companies and the bigger companies that they've heard of since they were a kid. But in terms of finding, or even where you guys post your jobs, how did some leader go about coming across your organization and then contacting you guys? So maybe we'll start off with Trinda, go in the reverse order of what advice you'd have for people that want to find cool startups or smaller companies to work for. Where can they go looking?
Yeah, so I always encourage people to really grow their network, places like LinkedIn and whatnot. Not just so you can go look at the jobs that get posted, because that's a common place you'll see it, or other sites, Glassdoor, Indeed. But like, I find I hear about products and technology and companies doing really cool things through articles and posts that people are amplifying on social media. I hear about things I didn't even know existed, cool things that startups are doing to innovate and be unique in terms of what they're offering to employees. And people really lean into that heavily because, that's the quickest way to reach the broadest market. So growing your network and connecting with more people, following, different topics or companies will help sort of broaden that and we'll spider web out from there. Because not all the great jobs are posted. I think, a lot of people in the startups, when you're earlier on, a lot of the staffing comes through networking. So maybe some of the more junior roles might come through, institutions and whatnot, but typically it's somebody they know. I mean, you don't have all the money in the world to spend, and you really need to know who's going to be working with you and you can trust, and you're always looking for unicorns, because, the cool thing about working for startups is that you don't get pigeonholed into doing just one thing. You get a much bigger picture of what's going on in the business, and it's a matter of we'll give you whatever you're capable or show potential of doing. So they're really looking for something unique. So networking, I think, is key. And then for the entry level jobs, obviously, making sure that you're surfing all the traditional websites that are out there. You'll find them posted there as well.
That makes sense. And Kerris and Krista, opening up to you guys to add on to that.
And one follow-up question, just frame this question is around, and I remember when I was an undergrad, it was really difficult to think about what a winning company looks like and why I should be joining a certain company. So another frame is, asking, how do you identify a winning company that you really, really want to work for? And how do you think about what attributes in the company you should be looking for? Because I do remember, 5-6 years ago, it was really, really tough for me to think about what the opportunity is in front of me if I accept a job, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would definitely reiterate what Trinda said around the networking piece. I think that's key, especially when companies are fairly small. It's hard to become well known when you're a startup of 10, 15 people. So I think that networking piece is key, and really looking to network either via the kind of investor, venture capital firms, and understanding which companies they're investing in and why, I think is often quite helpful as well to get a good grounding of, okay, well, if this particular investor or venture capitalist is prepared to put money into this organization, why is that? And how does that align with what I'm looking for from my career perspective? So I think that can be really helpful in that instance. So networking, I would say, is key, and just kind of finding out, who are the key players, which companies are they investing in, where are the opportunities to come from. But I think that, ultimately, when you're starting with an organization, you spend a lot of time, as Trinda said, doing many, many different roles, wearing tons of different hats, because there's so much that needs to be done. And you spend a lot of time with, a small group of people. So, spending time with people, prior to joining them is often important, because you'll figure out, okay, are these people I want to work with? Do they have the same values as me? Culturally, where is that kind of foundation starting from? What are their kind of, key messages that they're bringing to market? Do I align with those? Am I passionate about it? Is this something I can get behind? All of those things are really important to ask yourself. It's probably more important to do that than it is to be really specific about the product or anything like that. But I'd really try and spend time with people and really get to know them and understand if that's a group of people you can gel with and connect with and build a business with, because that's essentially what you're doing.
Yeah, and great comment on the winning strategies, David, as well. Krista, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, so obviously agree with everything that's already been said. Networking and LinkedIn are the two kind of primary places that you're going to go to, but there are smaller companies that often, startups work with to help to make sure that they're getting a diverse amount of talent, right? And so, for example, there's the built-in organization like Built-in Chicago. I think there's built-in across other, provinces or states as well, that can also help to kind of figure out who are they partnering with, and that can help to kind of figure out what startups are there. Companies like BPTN, which is Black Professionals in Tech Network, and so we partner with them to be able to make sure that we have a diverse population. So connecting with organizations like that and see who they're partnering with and who they're working with, you may be able to find some really good startups that way. Jockwell is another one of them. So look for those kind of niche recruiting agencies that can really help to connect you. And then on the question with regards to identifying a winning company, and so LinkedIn is a really great place and a really great source of information, both LinkedIn and the company website. And so on LinkedIn, there's a great section that talks about the life page, of the organization, and what are some of the things that they have at that company, if they're doing employee get-togethers, charity work, etc. They often have like testimonials from employees as well too. And then the company website will talk a little bit about the perks that they offer employees, Wi-Fi expenses, do they have employee resource groups, that kind of thing. So that's a really great way to identify a winning company through through those two sites are really great places to go to.
Yeah, and just a couple extra points on my end as well. I think that looking at the portfolio companies of venture capital firms such as the Leaders Fund is a really good way to find a bunch of companies by looking at one website. The VC community often seems like this, strange world when you're an undergrad that you don't really understand what it is. But on every VC website, they have a whole list of their portfolio companies. And I would really encourage people to, follow these VC firms on Twitter, follow them on LinkedIn. They're constantly posting about the, wins and losses of their portfolio companies. And it's a really, really good way to start finding startup companies all over the world. And then in addition to VC websites, there's also accelerators and communities that have groups of startups that go through them. So Y Combinator is the most famous one. Make sure you're following them on social media. Creative Destructive Lab is a good Toronto success story of an international accelerator that they have now. There's local ones in your community. So getting tapped into those communities is a really strong way to start finding these startups. And then also on assessing whether the company is winning or has a good trajectory, I think just learning the basics of how a company operates in terms of, they just raised a seed round. What does that mean? Or they just raised a Series A. And as some of the presenters said, which ventures are backing them, and do they have trusted partnerships, and who's already done the diligence on them? Because it's a double-edged sword. It's very, very exciting to join a startup with 5 people, but I think that understanding the risks that come along with that will really set your expectations on what you're gonna go into. So I think that was a great start on, how do we find companies? But I think one of the hard things for me as an undergrad was, I know the company, but who do I contact? Because there's 200 people that work here. Am I messaging the founder on LinkedIn? Am I trying to message a manager of engineering? It's often really hard to get a response. And so it would be awesome to just add a little bit of color from your guys' opinion on how to really break in and contact people just to get advice. So maybe we'll go the other way again. So Krista, if you want to start, and then we'll go back across.
The recruiter is always a great place to start. And so if you can find, on a LinkedIn page or the company website, who the person is who's responsible for recruiting, they really know everybody in the company and are really well tuned in to that. And so reaching out to them or somebody in the human resources organization is going to be very helpful, because we can often connect them with other individuals who could be really helpful to them, whether it's getting a foot in the door at the company or forming some sort of a mentorship relationship for them. I would say that that's probably one of the key people.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, 100%. If there's a recruiter at that organization already, then by far the best first point of contact. They'll often have all the information about the role, the manager, what the kind of key requirements are, et cetera, et cetera. So that'll be a great conversation. And they're always looking to network. So you'll usually get a good response back from there. I think, other ways that you can look at it is, if there's opportunities for internships or co-ops or things like that, just to get a foot in the door. Many of these organizations don't have a ton of cash when they're starting out. So, are often very open to hiring interns and co-op students to be able to kind of come in. So being able to kind of demonstrate, the value that you bring at that early stage can be really beneficial. And then it's, one of the advice I give anybody really, and I think particularly helpful at this, what problem are you going to solve? And I think if you can articulate that in a way that makes sense for the people that are reading it, it's all about problem solving in a startup environment. And, most companies are looking for people that can come and help them solve a problem. So if you can kind of come forward and say, this is the problem I want to solve, here's why I think I'm the best person to solve it, I think you'll get their attention more than just saying, hey, can we just grab a coffee and chat about this, that, or the other? That would be a piece of advice.
So I would say, building on what you just said, differentiating yourself. So as you said, what problem you're going to solve, but just, unique ways to approach people, creative ways to approach people, generally get people's attention. I think, we keep on doubling down on LinkedIn, but I can't say enough about it, right? At an early stage, when you're the one out looking and you're trying to make the contacts, it's worth paying for, a premium account on LinkedIn. It's not that expensive. It broadens, the visibility of who you can see within the LinkedIn universe. And from there, you can kind of, chase the breadcrumbs and see who that's a degree of separation away from somebody who's internal, and then you can solicit introductions. Any senior people on this call are probably going to hate me for saying this, but entrepreneurial founders, CEOs typically take the call. I find that they're so passionate about their business, and they remember way back when they were trying their best to get somebody to contact them, listen to them, give them money for their company. In my experience and with my own CEO today, even I find, when someone reaches out with a respectful and unique way or a problem they're going to solve, like you just said, I tend to get the email saying you should probably contact this person. So that's not a bad route to go. And yeah, to the points that were already said, these days, recruiters are more than happy when somebody reaches out to them, because we spend a lot of time in our talent team reaching out to people and getting ghosted. So you'll typically get a follow-up if you go directly to the recruiter. But in many organizations that are really, really just starting up, they may not have that dedicated person yet. So maybe target the founder at that point in time.
Yeah. And so in terms of, you guys said one of the good things that people can do is really explain why or how they can solve a problem for a startup. And I think that speaks to maybe the different qualities or different skill sets that startups are looking for in compared to big companies on a resume or in an interview. So I think if just a last question from the employee side of, what are those qualities that you guys are looking for that are really important to you that maybe if someone was applying to bigger companies, they wouldn't look so much at, for example, soft skills, autonomy, really driving your own tasks and being passionate about that. Anyone can start, but maybe Kerris, let's go with you.
Sure, absolutely. I think the soft skills are really critical, especially if you don't have a ton of work history behind you. And it's really important to demonstrate, what value you are going to bring in different ways. So I think that, in a startup environment or even kind of a scale-up environment, most companies are looking for individuals that take initiative. That's going to be a big piece because there's not a whole ton of direction going on. And there's always opportunity to really innovate. And so coming with examples of when you have taken the initiative as an individual to start something new, try something different, even if it didn't work, what were the learnings that came out of it, I think is really important. So demonstrating kind of curiosity, drive, passion, that ability to take the initiative and try something new, a little bit of courage in, taking a leap of faith here and there, I think is always really, really valuable to see. And that's, often something that's hard to teach. Quite often you can kind of teach a lot of the, what we call hard skills, code this in this way, or this is how you put a marketing campaign together, or whatever that might be. So it's really about, does that person, come with demonstrated experience of being curious, innovative, showing the initiative, and a little bit of courage in terms of trying something new and being prepared to fail and learn from it. I think that's always really important.
I can add to that. I agree with everything that you said, and also that ability to be really versatile and show, during a startup, there's a lot of things that people have to do and wear different hats. And so showing that you can be really versatile, that you can do a great job at balancing your independence with being a great collaborator, because, small companies, people have to work together often very closely, but you also have to show that you're a self-starter and that you're independent as well. And so showing a good balance between that. And the last thing that I would say, is that you have a really great aptitude to learn, right? And so we look for a lot of things in employees, potential employees, to show that they have a lot of potential. And just because you may not necessarily have formal training on something doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to learn that and to grow from that. And so that's something that I would say is something that's very important when starting with a company.
Yeah, somebody asked in the chat about when it's not the soft skill play, it's, they're looking for something very specific technically, and haven't necessarily had the opportunity yet to gain that experience. So, there's so much on people's websites about what it is they do, the technology they're offering, the problems they're trying to solve as a business. So, where you think you fall short of the experience in executing on technical stuff, do a ton of research, right? Know what you don't know, and be able to present how, like you just said, Krista, how you're going to ramp up, how you're going to learn it. It's good to know that people see their gaps and that they, what they're looking to gain experience on. And I want this job because it's going to allow me to gain that experience, and, demonstrating you're that quick learner. In a startup environment, it's important to be really adaptable and extremely resilient. So demonstrating things that you've done, and you're going to be up for the challenge, because it's not an easy situation all the time, right? You'll have a lot asked of you, and hopefully there's a lot of reward in what you do too. I would also check out the company websites. You should be, because you probably will have more often than not some longer days, because you are going to rub shoulders in a smaller organization with the same 5-10 people maybe on a day-to-day basis. As it was said before, you really got to love where you're spending your time. So you should be selective, especially, as we continue in a pretty hot job market. Most companies are posting their values on their website. They're kind of sharing what their experience might look like. And you should be pretty sure it connects with your own, because you're going to be spending a great deal of time with these people. And you should also be genuinely interested in the product the company's offering. You need to be passionate about what they're trying to solve and what they're delivering. Otherwise, you won't connect to it. It won't have that same purpose for you.
Yeah, and for me, if I get a message from someone that has a lot of passion but is more junior than I was thinking for the job posting, I might create a role for them. So it's definitely worth reaching out. And sometimes, when I write job postings, I'm just guessing on what I need. It's very hard to, in the early stages, to define and write something that is exactly what you want. So that's also a point. And so in terms of switching into more the operator lens of wanting to hire and retain talent for potential founders or current founders within this group, I think one of the main questions is, how do you sell someone on joining a startup versus a bigger company? We're in a weird stage with the job market for especially engineers right now, where they have a lot of power as the employee, and interview processes are getting shorter. You have to make decisions faster, and you really have to make someone connect with you in the initial 1 to 2 interviews to really win them to join your company. So I think that would be great. And both talking about selling someone on the vision of the company, and then also trying to explain to them the difference and upside of maybe mixing equity with compensation instead of just very high salaries of bigger companies. If we want to start with Trinda, we'll go back to you. And then we'll...
Yeah, I mean, you got to be good at it and have a good story to tell, right? And you want to be honest, obviously, because if you sell magic beans and the experience and what they're actually doing is different, it's just not going to pair well, and it's going to be short-lived. But one of the most important aspects of leadership, is inspiring people and connecting them to what it is you're trying to do. So you got to be a good storyteller, and you got to be looking for that type of individual who does have that appetite for risk in favor of future rewards. There are people who do not fit within that type of environment. There are people who would come out of their skin working in a big structured organization too. And you really got to understand, why people are looking. So selection is really, really important, but, connecting them to your purpose. And if your purpose and, the solution you're solving with your product, doesn't necessarily connect with them from a values perspective, right? Like, you got to talk about, organizations should be leaning into something other than just making money and delivering a product. It can be what they're doing, from a community perspective, or what they're doing from a volunteering perspective, how they're investing back in their people and enriching their people's lives and making a difference. So having that story to tell and making sure that story will be something they actually see in the wild, they'll get inspired and hopefully be interested in joining your company.
Yeah, I would say that you touched on that storytelling piece, and that's just so impactful, because quite often you're selling a vision, you're selling aspiration, you're selling, where you think you'll be next year, 2 years, 5 years down the line. So it's hard to do that unless you can become a good storyteller. And there's ways that you can learn how to become a good storyteller. There's, tons of companies that do training around this, and plenty of research you can find. And I think that, one of the other things that I would kind of just pinpoint as well, and you kind of mentioned this a little bit, Austin, is around, companies are moving quickly, and, you've got to shorten interview processes, et cetera, et cetera. I would kind of try and steer away from that as much as possible. I know that we're under kind of urgency, time pressure, get these people in because they've got 16 other offers on the table, all of that kind of stuff. But if the individual themselves doesn't want to take the time to meet a bunch of different people in that organization, and as you and an individual don't want to have the opportunity to share a bunch of information across numbers of different people with different perspectives and different responsibilities, that fit is going to be so hard to be able to nail down. And I think me as a job seeker, I would want to speak to 5 or 6 people before I took a leap of faith and joined a company that maybe hasn't got a product yet, but just has a vision. I want to know who I'm going to be working with. So I'd want to take the time as an individual. So somebody that doesn't want to do that might be a little bit of a yellow flag for me. And so as a company who's hiring, I would really advocate for taking the time, making sure that candidates can spend time with different individuals across the organization to get all of the information they need to make a smart decision about is this really where I want to spend the next couple of years of my time, really investing in, what will be really challenging and hard work. So I would kind of steer away from trying to rush things through too quickly.
And the only thing I would add to that too is make sure, because I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying, like people, even in this market, need to be willing to commit the time. Make sure that all of your people would tell the same story is the other thing. So, your employees are your best people to evangelize the business, and spread the word about who you are. But if they meet with a recruiter who's been well trained to inspire them and tell that story, and then they meet with a developer who tells them something entirely different, that they're going to sniff that out quickly. So make sure all of your employees are telling that same story, and they hear it enough times, then it becomes more, again, you want it to be true, but more believable, that will be what they'll experience.
I think this, this point that you made, Kerris, about the, this whole process and how long it takes is, we're of the same philosophy as well, right? That we take a little bit longer and we're getting a lot of pressure, right? Often, they've got all these other offers on the table. We need to be quicker. Why do they need to talk to 6 different people? But I do think that we're very deliberate, and I'm not going to, excuse away the fact that we do take a little bit of time because we want to make sure that it's a best fit for us, and it's also a really good fit for them because they need to be able to measure this. And so really selling that experience and making sure that they really understand why they want to join this company and why they want to join it now, right? So yes, now because maybe a compensation shares perspective, they get more options if they've joined earlier on, but what are you really selling? And really bring in those people who can really help them to feel that passion for it. So if it's an engineering role, getting that engineering VP in there to really talk to them about that, or a developer who's really passionate, and help them to really understand the culture and really what the company is about, because you are selling an experience to them about what it is going to be like working there and what are the cool problems that they're going to be helping to solve by coming in a little bit earlier on a startup versus a well-established company.
Yeah. I mirrored everything you guys are talking about, and I'm dealing with this right now. And I think it's super important to be patient, take your time. The first couple employees, or even, 10, 20 employees, are going to set the tone for the rest of your organization moving forward. And it's so critical that they not only are passionate about the need, but they understand where you guys are going, how you work, what are the hours like, what is the team culture like at that point, so that there's no surprises when they get into your workforce. I think being really transparent. David, I know we're running short on time. We can open it up to the floor now if you'd like. So I think encouraging anyone in the audience, ask questions. I think you're fine to put on your video and unmute yourself if you want to ask it instead of typing it in the chat, but open up to the floor.
Can I go first?
Yeah, go for it, Kevin.
Sure. One of the questions I had, just since there's a lot of startup experience collectively in this call, is just when you're building a startup, how do you balance that with your other commitments? Because at least from my perspective, I'm very interested in startup building, and even throughout high school, I was somewhat involved in that process. But one thing I often struggled with is that with school, extracurriculars, and a lot of other different commitments, it became hard to focus on the startup. So I was wondering how you guys balance everything from your plate.
That's a great question. I'll do my 2 cents and then I can pass it off to the panel. So I co-founded my current company while I was in school. So it is very difficult to balance it. I think just prioritizing, your mental health. So you got to know that you only have so much time. You don't have money to hire other people, and you kind of have to accept that it's going to take longer in some regards. And you have to be a lot more strategic in terms of, I really want to build the product, but how do I de-risk this as much as possible? Because you really got to look at, what is the next stage that's going to get me to beyond just me as a solo founder trying to build this product. And I think trying to build some sort of MVP, for example, if it's hardware with off-the-shelf parts, or can you cheaply prove the concept, maybe not in the way that you were thinking, but in a faster way? Can you hire co-ops, or maybe get a capstone group for free through a university to help you build that? And looking at those kind of resources that can supplement your time, but then being really strategic on, how do I convince the next person to join? or how do I get that first check in the door, instead of stressing yourself out with the longer term visions of I'm going to build this entirely by myself to go to product or go to market. Because I found that really trying to break it down into incremental pieces, being realistic of what time you have to put in it, was really, really important. Because I see a lot of people in school that are really passionate about entrepreneurship, but they stress themselves out and end up burning themselves out because they're just thinking and trying to get to that finished product way too fast.
I would reiterate that there's a really cool, very simple technique you can use with like a pie chart. And you have to be kind of really realistic with yourself and your starting point of saying, okay, what currently fills the 24 hours that I have every day? Okay, so I'm going to sleep for 7. And these are the things that are going to take up some time. These are the hours that I have for school, etc. And then you need to kind of ask yourself, okay, well, I want to spend 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, whatever it might be on my startup. And so how do I carve out those hours in any given day? And so what do I need to give up? It's like, okay, well, I can't watch Netflix anymore, or I'm going to have to get a dog walker, or I need to lean on my mum to help out with so-and-so, or it's just really kind of understanding. And if you kind of build that into a pie chart, then you've got a much better visualization, and you can be really realistic with yourself. Because if you're expecting to spend 60 hours a week on a startup, but you've already got 40 hours a week of school, plus you've got your other commitments, and you need to make sure you take care of your mental health, do some exercise, get your steps in, meditate, like all of the different things that you need to build into your life. Unless you kind of visualize it and set it out, it's hard to kind of grasp that, and it just gets out of hand. So I think just kind of coming back to that pie chart each time. I've used it a bunch of times, and I find it really helpful just to level set with myself. What are realistic expectations?
I would just add to that, it's along the same lines that really that goal setting, right? What is it that I want to accomplish this week? What, in incremental, small bite-sized pieces that are really achievable for you, right? Because if you think about the whole thing from start to finish, it's probably going to be really overwhelming, right? So that little bit of goal setting that you can do, that you're going to feel good about things along the way, but is also achievable, I think would be really helpful in setting aside that vision for yourself.
Great. Thanks, Kevin, for the question.
Thank you.
Yeah. I also had a question. Are we going on to the next one?
Yeah.
Is there another?
Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. So, I was looking up all your guys' companies here, and they're just really interesting. In particular, the ADA, I thought was a really interesting enterprise. But all of them seem to have developed in really, what's the word? I guess markets with a lot of competition, right? There are a lot of well-established players in these industries, healthcare, text, chatbots, everything like that. Just the tech industry in general is quite full. So how do you identify when the market's ready for disruption in the form of a startup, right? How do you identify if the market's prepared for that activity?
I'll try my best again and then go. So it kind of, you really need to understand, what is the value proposition of the business that you're trying to create. So, are you a deep tech startup that is going to have undeniable IP that you're going to, change the world by inventing some imaging play? That's one of them. The other one is, you're solving a problem that the current applications on the market are not good at. So you see, Airbnb, for example, maybe Airbnb is good at, 20 things, but they're really missing one thing for their user population. So you're going to hyper specialize in your, Airbnb that solves it for this narrow population. Or you just think that someone's product right now is not that good. So, it's an old technology that's been around for 20 years. It's not adapted to the 2022 kind of landscape of what people are looking for. So you're a modern version of, blank. So often it's hard because you don't see a particular necessarily clear gap of, this doesn't exist at all in any way. It's really trying to pinpoint one of those categories, in my personal opinion, but I'd love to hear from the other panelists as well.
Yeah, Ada kind of came at it from that differentiator perspective. It's not like chatbots didn't exist, but it's about, okay, what are we going to do differently in order for our product and future products to stand out. And so that was kind of a key one. And so it's really focusing on machine learning and automation for brands to be able to provide that VIP experience. And that's all the way through to anticipating needs of customers, not just answering questions. So that it's pretty easy to build a bot that will answer kind of an FAQ style set of questions, but how do you actually anticipate a customer's needs in an automated and digital way? And so that was really kind of the crux of it. So it wasn't about identifying, okay, there's a massive gap, nobody's ever done this before, but it's about how can we push the needle, how can we make it better, how can we ensure that this, you know, becomes part of the future of the way people live their lives. And so yeah, it's a product market fit for sure. It's also evaluating your competition and where are the gaps, and then understanding, well, what you have to offer, or what you aspire to have to offer, how does that differentiate itself from everybody else out there in the market?
Yeah, ours was the same. It wasn't like it didn't exist at all before, right? There were other people who were doing augmented reality or virtual photography or 3D imaging, but we brought it all together, right? And so it was really about saying, what are the different areas, and is there an opportunity and a benefit to the population to be able to bring this, right? Can we build this image in 3D? Can we change the different aspects or components of it? Can we move it, and then can we put it into somebody's space, right? There were individuals out there doing those individual things, but we really saw a gap in being able to put that together and using it to be able to sell things. And so that is what differentiated us from the other companies that were there.
Yeah, I was with 360 in its you know, infancy, and it's in a more mature stage than it is now, but I'm well connected to its history, and I'd say everything that Austin said kind of resonates with the history I know of the company. We, you know, our CEO founded the company to solve a problem, but it wasn't an entirely net new problem. There were other people doing like things in the industry, so he was offering what he felt was a better product. And now we're at this phase of our journey which is the point that I've joined at, where, you know, companies like an Airbnb who do something that we're missing, we're beginning to acquire. So we grew a lot by acquisition. So like all the things Austin was describing kind of resonate with me in terms of what happens along the journey. And that's where we're at today. Now we're trying to fill in the areas that we don't offer today through these founder, in most cases, led entrepreneurial companies that do offer that, and we're bringing them into the family and filling in all those pieces. So sticks with me.
It's a great question and great answers as well. So we'll take two more, and then we're going to go into the breakout rooms that David said. So we'll get to Gabrielle, and then we'll do Raj.
Yeah, thank you for speaking with us. And one thing I wanted to talk about is I think businesses are deeply founded in people. And I think with the right people who are passionate, collaborative, but at the same time autonomous, startups can go very far. But one thing I find even more important is that all the people are in line towards the same vision, and everyone's work complements each other towards being in line towards reaching that same vision. And I was wondering if you had any tips for a startup founder on how do you align people towards reaching that same vision?
I can start if that's helpful. So we have what we call our North Star, and that's kind of that vision, right? And it's about setting out, you know, what is it we're here to do, and making sure that that's kind of communicated consistently and regularly across the organization. But then when you're building out goals and objectives, you know, each layer within the organization, it's about how does that connect with our North Star? So how do I know as an individual that the work I'm doing on a day-to-day basis is going to move the needle on that North Star, and making sure that there's good connectivity between the goals, objectives, tasks, and initiatives that I'm working on, and how does that actually fit into that overall goal? And then communicating that and reporting back on it and tracking it and sharing it and being really transparent around, well, we missed here and we made it up here and we did this, but we weren't able to do that. And here's what we've learned. And just consistently like sharing that transparently, communicating it regularly, I think is, you know, one way that we found has started to really work and make sure people are really connected to it individually on a day-to-day basis. It's not perfect, but it's
Yeah, another thing is even that North Star I found with startups, it can move around a lot. So it's like people in line towards that one North Star, but that North Star is always moving. So it's very, it's a dynamic environment that's,
And that's the fun of the startup, right? You have to recognize that there's going to be times where you need to pivot. And so what you thought the product was going to be, or what you thought the service was going to be, maybe that doesn't land in the market, when you actually kind of go out there. And so you have to pivot. And so you have to kind of recognize and learn from that and switch it up and redefine and redirect people towards a changed goal. So that's likely going to happen a number of times in startup.
And I feel like from someone who has pivoted before, I think there's a tendency for leaderships and startups to keep those definition phase of a pivot to only the executive. And I think it's really, really important to involve your employees, even if you don't think it's necessarily useful, in the definition process of that pivot, and making sure that they understand, with and without this, how does this change both the business, the consumer's life, your life, and making sure that they understand the, as you said, redefinition of the North Star 1,000 different times in 1 year. And then also taking a moment when a piece of the product or a feature is finished and making sure that you have somewhat of not a ceremony, but like a reiteration of how that finished feature fits into that vision of the North Star, and constantly like slapping values on a piece of paper and expecting people to read that doesn't work very well. So you have to make it fun and interactive for people to understand where their small portion of the job fits into the whole of the company, and make sure they feel appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was a great question, Gabrielle. Thank you. Trinda, do you have something to add on?
Genius new, but foundations of trust, right? So that you have that space to investing a lot in creating that sort of psychological safety. They give you the space to pivot and make changes in direction, and they trust in the vision. So making sure that you're investing a lot of time. You hit the nail. Values are words on walls until you educate people on how to spot them and live them in the wild. Values-based decision making, values-based leadership, and tying those words into what you do and why you do it. Then if you have challenging times, you need to pivot, you need to scrap something that someone's worked tremendously hard on for a year. There's that foundation of trust that they appreciate that you're a good leader and you're doing it for a reason, not just for fun.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. Raj, we'll quickly go to your last question, and then we'll break out into the breakout rooms.
Yeah, thanks so much for this great discussion. So one of the things that Trinda mentioned was the importance of having a social or environmental purpose, beyond the core business, and engaging your people in it. I'm kind of curious, how do you practically implement that in your company, and is there any ways that you could be improving that?
So one of the things that we do, to encourage community involvement and embeddedness where we operate, and it just organically then also fosters team building and volunteering, and providing work-related time for employees to do that volunteering. It's great for mental health, team building, stepping away and doing something. Everybody always feels good after they give back. Giving people time for their learning and development hours, again, enriching their lives, in my mind, is something that is about giving back to communities, right? Because then I always think about, the extended family and the ecosystem of people that you support beyond that individual who works for you. So, giving them a good experience, giving them time and space to learn, develop, enrich their lives means they go home and they serve their families, their friends, their fur babies, whatever it might be, better, and you're giving back in some small way. But volunteering and creating volunteer opportunities is great, because then you can make it a group activity too, and connect with the communities where you operate.
I can just add that, at Threekit, I would say that the three things that make that social, contribution in the community successful is, commitment, that you have commitment from your senior leadership, that this is something that as a company that we believe in. So we put it in our handbook. Each employee has 20 volunteer hours that they can use. And so, we make sure to help to arrange opportunities that they can either do that individually or as a group. And the other part would be, so that commitment, that time, and also budget can help too, right? So we're going to invest some of our own money as a company to be able to make that happen. And so we do have a committee that meets, I think it's on a monthly basis. We do have a volunteer activity every quarter, and we do allocate a certain amount of a budget so that they can do things, or we can use that money to help to contribute to maybe people running in a 5K race or something like that, and we'll pay for registration fees, something like that. So that's how we find it to be really successful and work for us.
Yeah, we've built some really clear guidelines around this as well, and similarly to what Krista and Trinda said, volunteering is a big one. We give that extra time off, so there's an expectation there, and not just for volunteering but also protesting as well. So we include that as part of that kind of community piece, and then we run various initiatives throughout the year where we do company matching on gifting as well for charities and associations and communities that align with our core values around kind of bringing diversity into the tech space, and working with a number of different STEM organizations as well. So we're really kind of strategic about it. And then we're a digital first company, so that we work, every role is 100% remote, but we get together at certain times in the year for team offsites or company events and things like that. And so we always make sure that there's a social impact element as part of those get-togethers as well. So teams will get together to do some volunteering, or we've got one with bike building where we're giving back the bikes. It's again a team event, so you got that kind of collaboration piece, but also it's giving back to the communities in which we work and operate. So.
And it's fun when you can gamify some of that too, right? Because it builds some camaraderie amongst teams, and it's an excellent place to get an individual contributor, because all of those things are always better served when they're employee led, things that they want to do, things that they connect to, community groups, whatever, and it gives them an opportunity to step into a leadership role and be proud of something that they help to enable. So but we have challenges where they're gamified and like walkathons and stuff, and the money's going to charity, so it's good for wellness too as well. And you inherently also, the added benefit, get some presence. People see what you're doing, and other people might join some of your gamification externally. So it gets your name out a little bit too.
Thank you.
It's great. I'm going to jump in now just to switch gears, but I really do want to thank our panelists, Krista, Trinda, and Kerris, and our moderator, Austin, for delivering such a really high value session and mentoring our Schulich leaders in this topic. So really learned a lot, and hope to keep in touch with you for future recruitment opportunities for our network as well.